Welcome to today's Air Defenders Podcast, Episode 8, entitled Gaining Knowledge Through Lessons Learned from an ADA Chief. I'm your host, Amber Osei, Public Affairs Officer for the Chief and Commandant of ADA. And today I'm joined with two special guests, CW5 John Fallin and CW4 Kevin Kruthers. And I'd like to welcome the guests now. Welcome to the show.
Oh, this is Chief Fallin. Thanks so much. I'm glad to be here. Just getting ready to retire. I'd love to share some of the things I've seen.
Okay, awesome.
Thanks
and
for having me,
welcome.
Amber. It's CW4 Kruthers, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Okay, perfect. So let's dive in. So the title of today is Gaining Knowledge Through Lessons Learned from an ADA Chief. CW5 John Fallin, that we have with us today, is about to retire. And we really just wanted to kind of talk to him about some of the experience that he's had since he's been in the Air Defense Artillery and just the lessons that he's learned. I know that you probably have a lot of knowledge from your time in and all the time that you've spent doing what you're doing. So,
well, actually, one of the things I wanted to get, and I'll maybe get into it even more later, but I was
okay.
very intrigued when you said, that the topic is lessons learned. So not a lot of people know this, but the Air Defense branch has a lessons learned cell. That's usually was embedded in .D. I was the first military evaluator or assessor that was part of that when I came back from Korea. And we were ending OIF 1 at that time. And there were so many lessons learned, as you can imagine, between the fratricide, 507th, and all this stuff. And lots of things. And, I was a young W1. And at the time, Colonel Bob Burns looked to me and said, I want you to grab everything you can get it published. I want you to follow how Call does it. And let's get some stuff done. And during that time, my assignment there, working with many others like Nate Jones, Chad Wallet, and others, we stood up an ADAFCO course. We established the Patriot Commo Handbook. We started looking at things like RT3 and how you train, virtual training. All of that stuff was done by a small cell that had the backing of both the .D director as well as the commandant, or the DCG, which at the time was General Heidi Brown. So, I think
Awesome.
that may be something we can look at if it's still, because I think they still exist, but I haven't seen a lot from them. But in my mind, having that one organization dedicated to taking lessons learned across the branch, because Call does a good job, but Call is focused on the divisional and BCT Army. So having something that you can do yourself, especially now that we have teams, I think is something in my mind would be a lesson observed that we could probably apply. But so I'll let you continue.
Well, I mean, since you started us off with that, let's just go there. I think it's cool that we titled it Lessons Learned and you're telling us a little bit about that history. So if you want to expand on that a little bit, and what year was that and what rank were you at that time?
So that was 2005, I believe, 4 or 5. And I was a W1, and that was the other thing. So, kind of, going back to kind of how my career has progressed. Many of the the people out there know this, that I have taken a very non-traditional path from going enlisted to becoming a CW5. I started off in the infantry. I did 10 years there, had a lot of division, 17 TC rotations. That kind of my foundational, Army way was established that way. And then I crossed over into Patriot after a couple of different things. As a staff sergeant, went to Korea, came back, broke my leg, and ended up in .D as a staff sergeant. Learned a lot.
Okay.
So
Okay.
learned a lot. But after that, while I was there, I had, I never really, infantry doesn't have warrant officers. So I didn't think anything about becoming a warrant. My goal was to become a platoon sergeant and then a first sergeant, and then I'd be done. I had two really good warrant officers, Dale Maupin and Scott Stevens, that just basically badgered me until I put in a packet. And so I was accepted. We went. And actually, one of the interesting things that I want to mention in my retirement comments as well is that our WOBC class ended up producing 3 CW5s. We had myself, Anson Seebeck, and Gray Young. I think we're one of the few classes that did that. But anyway,
Awesome.
So coming out of that, decided, and by the way, in .D as a staff sergeant, that's where I first started working on a system called THAAD. I was a training and doctrine developer, and I loved it because it was new. One of the things that I perceived was a lot of the other air defense community was entrenched in kind of old ways of doing things, and not, if it's not broke, don't fix it type. And what I saw as an opportunity in THAAD was we can learn from what Patriot and SHORAD and all those guys have done, and apply it to this brand new weapon system. It also ended up being interesting that the weapon system got transferred from the Army to the Missile Defense Agency for its development and fielding. So again, started off that at 99, and then went over to Korea as a 140 Echo, trying to learn maintenance. It was challenging for me. I've always been an operator slash tactics slash gunner, but it was challenging, but in the end rewarding. When I came back from that as a W1, one of my mentors, Joe Janishek, that worked in .D, was asked to form this lessons learned cell. And as a young W1 coming back from Korea, they diverted me to become the first military analyst for that. So that was in, like I said, 2004, 3 or 4, somewhere around there. And again, it was interesting times, and we were doing so much good stuff. I still talk with Nate Jones, one of the legends of air defense, every now and then about how we got all that done. And again, it was because of leadership focus and looking at having a entity established just to do that, instead of relying on the units to do kind of collect it themselves. Because let's be honest, when it comes down to units, a lot of times, that AARs may be important, but you got that, got to go home and see mama. So there's a lot of times that the AR comments and things of that nature aren't shared correct or completely.
So is there anything from that time and that cell that we're still using now?
Yes, actually. So the ADAFCO course is still ongoing. And it was our first joint course that we utilized Air Force CRC crews. And we sent the students to Kirtland Air Force Base in New Mexico, where they get joint training on the joint kill chain and working with an actual weapons director and a CRC crew. So, and that is still ongoing to this day. I had very little, just a little bit of influence and talks with the Top Gun, but Nate Jones established the Top Gun course, and that Top Gun course is still going on to this day. And again, that was all coming from lessons learned out of OIF. The Patriot Commo Planner's Handbook. We worked with Raytheon because that was one of the other things came out is there's a saying that, a Patriot battery is a signal company with missiles. So we had a lot of communications capability, but nobody knew how to use it. So working with Raytheon, and at the time it was LTPO, we had them produce that, and they're producing it, I want to believe, annually. So I just saw, I think it was 6 months ago, another recent copy come out. So that's still in existence. The RT3. One of the things we learned is the units need to be able to train off system, because your system could be up at all the times and things of that nature. We looked at many various things and it caused a lot of ruckus, but in the end, the LTPO and others started looking at, all right, we need a separate training device. And we ended up with the RT3, which is for Patriot. And then we ended up with the TT3 for that. But again, lessons learned was you can't always train your system, just like you can't always do maintenance on your system, because you maybe do a mission for long periods of time. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yes, and maybe Chief Kruthers can help me with some follow-up.
Yeah, and one thing of note, Amber, and also to Chief, the ADA lessons learned division still exists within .D and the doctrine side. And they put out the weekly interceptor. They put out lessons learned and best practices, different publications. A lot of stuff recently has been centered on the counter small UAS problem. They put out a commander staff guide to counter small UAS and LISCO last year. Some lessons learned and best practices regarding Stinger employment at the battalion level, just things that, probably a lot of it is recirculating things that need to be revisited in today's current environment. That it's good that they exist and have that institutional memory to bring some of that stuff back, or refresh it, or integrate a lot of input from, because especially with the counter small UAS problem, with rapid acquisitions and fielding, they're throwing kit into soldiers and leaders' hands faster than the traditional doctrine channels are able to keep up with it. So to have ADA lessons learned, collect this stuff, ingest it, put it back out to the force. Some of it they're getting from special forces or other units out in the field that have employed this type of equipment, and putting that out there for all of our knowledge. So I believe a lot of their stuff's on their SharePoint behind, CAC-enabled firewall, but the weekly interceptor, I believe they put out a more unclassified domain. So it's just something to keep in mind and let you know that all your work didn't go by the wayside, that section still exists and still puts out work today.
I'm glad to hear that. Might be something I'll get off with you offline to get. I'd like to get the link and try to get that incorporated into our teams communities, because I think that would be helpful. Again, with the new advent of teams is I think changing the game, and it's going to make us so much more better in terms of the ability to collaborate and share information.
That's awesome. So let's kind of regroup a little bit, and I'll just ask you some basic questions that maybe our audience that are listening would like to know. So how many years have you been in for the from the military altogether?
I have 33 years in as of this past October.
Okay. And during that time, what different places were you stationed at?
I started off in Germany, went to Fort Riley, Kansas, then to Bliss, Korea, back to Bliss, to Sill, Qatar, and then Korea multiple times. My last tour with Korea was a 35th Brigade Senior Warrant Officer Advisor to Colonel Hinkie, the brigade commander. And then also Huntsville, Alabama. I was the first military evaluator assigned to what's called the BMDS OTA, or Operational Test Agency. They're a division of ATEC that evaluates any weapon systems such as THAAD, forward-based mode radars, CTBMC, to make sure they are meeting the warfighter's needs. So I was able to do that as a CW4, made CW5, went to Korea, came back and through discussions with senior Army leaders like General Dickinson, General Carbler, one of the things that we noticed is when it comes to, because the Army capability management function for it's really, presence matters. So we all made a decision to establish a new position for the THAAD team lead to be stationed in S&D. I'm sorry, stationed with FCO out of Fort Sill, Oklahoma, but with duty at SNDC, working with ACM S&D and working also with all the NDA entities that we need in order to make sure we have a system that's safe, suitable, and supportable. One of the things a lot of people don't really realize is that, THAAD is the only weapon system that is developed and sustained by a entity that is not the U.S. Army. And that causes for some friction and consternation across multiple domains.
Also, with the lessons learned, as far as like, you starting the process and everything with the military, can you kind of give us an insight on maybe some like life lessons that you learned since you've been in?
Oh, so one, take care of yourself, take care of your friends, family, make sure that you are uh, always ready, um, and that you read, constantly read anything. It doesn't matter what it really is, because you'll be surprised. I'm a big science fiction fan, but the more
Hmm.
you read, just it broadens your perspective on how everything kind of works together, not just the Army.
Okay. Well, whenever you retire, what do you plan on doing?
So right now I'm looking at possibly some of my mentors, like Mark Sprinkle, rest in peace, as well as Phil Adams, have gone over and become a CETA contractor for the ACM, basically taking off the green suit, putting on civilian clothing, and now supporting whoever the green suiter is or the government lead in that. So right now, that's what I'm kind of looking at. I haven't completely closed it all the way down, but I want to continue to contribute. And also, I've started a lot of efforts that I think are very important and build a lot of relationships that I want to
Hmm.
continue to press to make, again, to make the THAAD weapon system better for everybody, and especially for the warfighter.
And what area are you in now? What area do you live in now?
So I'm in Redstone Arsenal, Huntsville, Alabama, and am embedded within Space and Missile Defense Command under General Carbler, working with the ACM Space or Strategic Missile Defense Team under Colonel Noble, and working directly with all of the NDA entities, whether it be for the THAAD 4 base mode, TPT 4 base mode, or even the Command and Control, Battle Management and Communications, CTBMC, and of course, BMDSOTA. So it's a convoluted relationships, but one of the things that a lot of Army air defense senior leaders will tell you that is in the air defense as a leader, you need to get very used to having multiple bosses. It's not
Mhm.
simple like it is in the infantry or the armor, where you have a commander and that's who you work. No, you have a commander, but you also have other equities that you are responsible to and need to be responsive to, and that is a very personality driven effort. But
Mhm.
like with me, I have to be able to both and translate. I have to be able to talk MDAEs when I'm talking with senior engineers, with PhDs that are talking, come from NASA, all the way down to that, that young PFC or specialist is sitting in a THAAD van asking about, well, why does this button do this? And so it's challenging, but it's extremely rewarding.
So would you say that your actual area of expertise is with the THAAD?
Yes. So mainly THAAD and any kind of joint integrated air and missile defense planning. So one of the things with that is, and nothing against my patron brothers and sisters, but we're a
Mhm.
little more strategic when it comes to how we or how we integrate with the theater. And so a lot of times we have to be able to understand, we have to understand what a double ADP is and who writes it. And where do you go to talk to somebody about pre-planned responses? A lot of work with the Area Air Defense Commander, the AABCs, as well as the AOCs, Air Force squadrons, Navy. Did a lot of work with the Navy for a program they called Weapon Tactics Instructor.
Mhm.
Because one of the things that one of the platforms we'll always work with is Aegis. We share pretty much a lot of the same battle space. So yeah, combination of that and then any kind of integrated air and missile defense operational planning.
So where do you see those relationships and that equipment working and doing for the Army in the next 10 years?
So in the next 10 years, it's going to be very chaotic. I predict. I think one of the things is we're going to continue to learn lessons, and I think
Mhm.
one of them is probably going to be uh, a centralized versus disaggregate approach of how we fight. Um, so right now, I see in the next 10 years that IBCS is going to come on board. We're going to learn some lessons with that. THAAD will continue to try to evolve and try to integrate with it, but again, with two different, like for a better term, services, trying to bridge those gaps between the two is challenging to must. My real concern, and I've shared this with some of the leaders, is that if we concentrate so much on centralized control, centralized execution, which is what it looks like when we have IBCS, when as we've seen in battles, recent battles in Ukraine and others, that a lot of times you may not have that luxury, and you may have to fight completely disaggregated down to the smallest level.
Mhm.
There's a concept that the 82nd and other the airborne people used called LGOPs, which is little groups of paratroopers. But what that concept is they just take it right up front that when they jump out of those airplanes, they're going to land, they're going to be disaggregated. So instead of trying to get everybody on the same time or whatever, it's hey, you find another paratrooper, you find another paratrooper, and you all march to the sound of the guns under the following the commander's intent. I
Mhm.
think one of the things I would recommend we start exploring is little groups of air defenders, something that we know will be disaggregate. And at certain times and places on the battlefield, they come up, connect, execute the commander's intent in the mission, and then just disintegrate so that they cannot be targeted and then killed. But again, I don't think we're there yet. But I think we'll learn some lessons as IBCS comes more on board, and as things in Ukraine and other places continue to evolve.
Okay. Well, that's very interesting. What do you think about that, Chief Crothers?
I think definitely the idea of losing this kind of luxury of having a very deliberate, very elaborate, mud to space kill chain, lots of comms, as Chief alluded to, having all those pieces in place at a time and place of a modern conflict is a pipe dream. And I hope that, from my perspective, that those capabilities allow us to achieve more of that rapid, tailorable, small groups, platoon size elements, maybe to react and do what we need to do to achieve our objectives rather than the opposite, right? Where it ends up tying everything real tight in a centralized bundle. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting problem set, and we'll have to, we have a lot of concepts. We do a lot of wargaming and tabletops, and I think we really have to get kit into soldiers and young leaders' hands and get it exercised, stress it,
Mm-hmm.
and really start fleshing out those concepts and ideas as we have the hardware to actually interact with, right, and start seeing with what people do with it when we get it in their hands. I think it's going to take you know a lot of these younger soldiers and leaders that we're bringing up now that maybe are can look at it in a different way and be more creative with it, and come up with some more agile ways of implementing it, that I'm really looking forward to help ushering that in as an old guy, or an older guy. And Chief, I wanted to follow up with a question about just kind of everything we've talked about, but it really leads to something that a problem that I'm close to right now is, as the proponent, is retaining talent. And it's interesting. There's you and several others out there. You've kind of mentioned them. It's we can count them on one hand. That despite all the experience, training, expertise, spending some time down there in Rocket City with all these job offers around you, what is it that made you wear the uniform for 33 years and not cash out at 20 and go after some of these other lucrative opportunities out there?
I've been asked that quite a few times. Matter of fact, I've been asked that since I was a W3. Hey, why are you still in? It's not about the money for me. Money's nice. It helps me do, enables me to do some things. But to me, it's always about the weapon system and the soldiers that operate it. I always want to be able to make sure I am doing the best I can to ensure they have what they need when they need it to accomplish their mission. It's one of the things I learned as a young infantry leader, is that if you take care of your soldiers and the weapon system, everything else will come to be. And like you said, you can have some complex plans that just do not survive first contact. But if your soldiers are trained, taken care of, they care, and the weapon system works like it's supposed to, they'll handle it. So that's kind of what drove me. And I'll be honest with you, the thing that has made me, the reason I ended up dropping my paperwork was, the body's just a little old, and the family and the wife are tired of moving around. And it's to the point, hey, I've gotten so far, I was able to help develop the first ad unit. It's the first TCO to get qualified. Planner that got him into Guam, supervised a lot of stuff they did in Korea, and now I'm one of the things we've always, or at least we used to, is that the ACM was the end all be all of the expertise of every weapon system. So now I can finish out my career as the team lead for ACM, making sure all the .mil.pf domains provide the soldiers and the units what they need. So bottom line for me, it's all about the soldiers and making sure they get what they need. Does that answer your question?
Yes, Chief. It touches on something that I've added into our culture camp, really the intrinsic motivation. And I kind of say the same thing, that, if for many of us, if our only objective was that this was a job to get a paycheck to put food on the table, we have a lot of other options that present a lot less obstacles and challenges. And so really what keeps you going and what keeps you, choosing this path over some others. And you really hit it on the head. I mean, I look at intrinsic motivation, and the three components of that, mastery, purpose, and autonomy. Mastery, you hit it on the head, right? You've gone from, where you started to where you are now, and you've kind of, as far as, Army positions, have kind of reached that pinnacle, as you said, and kind of, did everything that you set out to achieve in terms of mastery. I don't think, it sounds like your mastery is not done. You want to continue to be invested in this challenge beyond wearing the uniform. And I think that's what's kind of alluring about our career field, is that you achieve levels of mastery along a spectrum, right? But you never really make it to the top. And that can seem daunting to some, but for others, it's just this insatiable challenge, right? We never really reach the end. And that's what kind of keeps us going. You talked about purpose. Your purpose was your soldiers, and making sure they had the weapon system there to achieve the mission. And autonomy, I kind of danced around including that and talking about warrant officer culture, because we don't want to send the wrong message that we're just a ghost, right? But I think when you've achieved a certain level of mastery and your commander knows you're invested in the purpose, you're sort of afforded a little more autonomy, in the sense that hey, give Chief my intent, let Chief go do what Chief has to do, and they're gonna, come through for us rather than chain him to a desk and micromanage him and things like that. So um, I think you personified all those 3 points, and I hope that there's younger warrant officers that listen to this and hear your testimony. And anytime you get a chance to share that, I know you do, but keep sharing that because we are really always looking to retain our talent, and it's a challenge to get them to go beyond that 20 years time in service,
Yeah.
CW3.
So I got a couple of points I want to highlight on that. I liked mastery and autonomy. So mastery, I think, is very difficult at times for air defense leaders, including warrant officers, because mastery entail, one of the things in the infantry that I learned as very young was that never ask a soldier to do something you haven't done. And you can't really do that in air defense because there's different, you got a tango that's doing a launcher crew drill, you got somebody else doing radar, you got somebody else doing EPP, all that stuff. What I would challenge young warrant officers to do is like, you got a lot going on, but take some time and you don't have to certify, but at least do the job. Just do it. So you have a feeling and you have some empathy for what they're going through. It gives you so much depth. When I was a staff sergeant in Korea as a 14 Echo, I made it a point to table 8 all the way through. I did the radar crew drill, the EPP, the ECS. I did all of that because I wanted to make sure I understood exactly what my soldiers were going through. And I think that's one of the challenges we have is we are, as a branch and organization, not set up to kind of groom that mastery as we go through, because there's such a diverse number of functions that they have to do. Now, in terms of the autonomy, I love that you got it. That you get autonomy when you gain trust, and you gain trust by presence and by performing and doing what your commander and others need. And you do that now, and that's the other thing too. Is along with autonomy comes the ability to be listened to. That's one of the things I've heard lots of warrants complain to me is that they want to do something or they're trying to do something and they brief their commander and the commander doesn't want to hear it, doesn't want to do it, blah, blah. And a lot of times that sours that warrant officer with, well, I'm not going to do anything then. And I think we have to be able to take those licks. All right, got it. Matter of fact, I've had a significant one here in the last 6 months where I recommended all the way up to major high speed, high levels, and got told no. And it hurt, but you know what? I have to take that with a grain of salt, and I have to continue to do my job. And again, one of the things, I guess my favorite quote, or actually a couple of them. One, do your job, do it well. Everything else will fall in place if you do that. Two, instead of cursing the darkness, light a candle. Don't be part of the problem, be part of the solution. And then lastly, as you interact with anyone in the world, and as you're trying to do your mission, remember that the output of your discussion, collaboration, whatever, should always be focused on progress, not victory. You don't have to win. You just have to keep moving forward.
And you know what? I can tell that you're very passionate about your job and that you've loved doing it this whole time. And I think that's awesome because there's a lot of people that don't really get to do what they love and they're not passionate about what they're doing. So I think that's great. Chief Crothers, do you have anything else?
No, just Chief, it was a pleasure as always. And if you ever need something from the proponency here or Okada, you know how to get a hold of me. And best of luck in your next chapter. And I'm sure we'll see each other again.
Yes, I appreciate you, and I appreciate your efforts, Chief Kruthers, on the the campaign to get everybody to understand how important warrant officers are and why you should be looking to become a warrant officer. I think it's having some effect, and it's about time we did that, because for a while it seemed like it was kind of one of those, hey, we'll only select you if you're good, but now it's a hey, everybody should be able to apply. Let's work it out, because everybody has talent. You just got to figure out what it is and then how to use it.
Absolutely.
There we go. Thank you for listening in to today's Air Defenders Podcast, Episode 8, Gaining Knowledge Through Lessons Learned from an ADA Chief, with guests CW5 John Fallin and CW4 Kevin Crothers. Thanks again so much for being here, guys. I really appreciate y'all logging in.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to share some of my thoughts. Thank you.
That's all we have for today. I am your host, Amber Osei, and we look forward to sharing with you again in Episode 9.